And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Hey, welcome back to the show. It has certainly been a busy weekend for those busy bees that would like to deprive you of your fundamental rights, such as your Second Amendment, which, of course, this is all predictable. It's not as if we didn't know that they would go down this road, but Barack Hussein Obama, the president of the United States, has made it clear that he intends to do a series of executive actions. Who knows what kind of damage he's going to do. Hillary, on the other hand, has come out and basically said that we need to erase the Second Amendment. We will discuss that in great detail. She wants to take back the Second Amendment from NRA extremists. I don't know what an NRA extremist is. I guess it's somebody who believes in the Second Amendment, and that therefore makes them an extremist because they support an organization that supports what they believe in. I don't know. Hillary doesn't clarify, but she must not have very good advisors, because the Second Amendment is not just some sort of a Republican thing. It is certainly bipartisan at the very least. There are a tremendous number of people who might identify themselves as Democrats or independents. I mean, Hillary's more extreme than Bernie Sanders. It's hard to make this up. And Bernie Sanders is a full-blown leftist, but understands that there is a Second Amendment. Surprise, surprise. Of course, he's not a Democrat. Most people think he is. He's an independent. And man, what in the world is going on in California? Of course, we have the speaker race going on right now for the House of Representatives. We've got Kevin McCarthy up against Jason Chaffetz, and that's going to be a tough, bloody battle unless something changes. There's some very determined people who would like to see somebody other than McCarthy get it, because they see, there was an article in the Fresno Bee that they basically see Kevin McCarthy as Boehner 2.0. And, I would say I would give Kevin a little bit of credit. He at least knows how to package it a lot better. He doesn't run around crying. He knows how to work with people. He's not nearly as conservative as I would like our speaker to be. I will say that absolutely. I don't think he would be quite as bad as Boehner. And at the same time, I don't know. Jason Chaffetz is one of the guys that knocked that Mark Meadows out of his committeeship and or pushed him off the committee. But they've made it up, and Mark Meadows is supporting him. So that is going to be a legit race there, and we will definitely keep you posted. But meanwhile, in California, I don't know what's going on. It's a little crazy. Jerry Brown, he passed the right to die legislation, and he made some bizarre comments about that. Talked about the whole you remember he was a Jesuit priest at one point. He was a Jesuit. He went to the seminary, and he said he read a letter from Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and he read a letter from Brittany Maynard's family. And he just decided to make the decision completely based on what he himself would like to have as an option. And he would like that available as an option for himself. So therefore, he signed the law. You can't make this stuff up. And he also signed an anti-racial profiling law. Now, that sounds really nice. We need to do away with racial profiling. This is being pushed by the Black Lives Matter movement. And we'll get into it a lot more later on, including getting your opinion. But basically, the bill just requires cops to do more paperwork and record the race and demographic information of people they come in contact with and pull over. And I'm thinking, when they pull people over, don't they run their licenses? Doesn't that automatically create a record? Why do we have to do additional things? It's another nanny state government, another law, another requirement, another restriction. And of course, it becomes the perfect nexus point for lawyers to sue our state, to sue our government, to sue our police departments. And we all know where that money's going to come from when they win. It's going to come from you and I. It's going to come from our tax dollars. It's going to come from our wages. And all for what? I just, anyway, I think you know where I stand on that. And then on that same note, the people, the Marxist progressives left, the Marxist progressive left, the people who have a stranglehold on your state. Oh, by the way, their nexus of power is now San Francisco. Oh, recent report: blacks are left out of San Francisco's prosperity. There's a report out that they're only making 58 cents on the dollar for whites, Asians, and Latinos, for whom wages and earnings have gone up, whereas for blacks, they have fallen 5%. So we're going to get into some talk about some of the liberal progressive policies and how it's all bogus, because basically, and author and commentator Thomas Sowell said it very well. When the environment is placed above all else and you wipe out jobs for ordinary working people, it hurts the minority communities, the black community in particular, the most, of course. But no one will ever call them on their hypocrisy in the lamestream media. And then I'm gonna talk to you about a story today out of California, out of Sacramento, about how much you actually pay in taxes. And you definitely going to want to stay tuned for that, because they're planning to raise your taxes even more. They don't think you pay enough. And I want to know what you think. And so we'll be taking your calls on that, because I'm just curious. Do you agree with your government who doesn't think you pay enough in taxes? And if you do, we'll give you the floor and let you make your case for why we should pay even more in taxes here in one of the most highly taxed states in the union. And then what do we get for it? I mean, the freeway that you're speeding on right now, probably full of potholes. And of course, when we get the first rains, we find out how intact our roads are. And you're probably wondering, well, if I pay all this money in taxes, where's it going? Because it sure as heck didn't find it. The rubber doesn't meet the road. It never made it to where it needed to go. And you can certainly see that the government spends a lot of money on employees, on pay, benefits, retirements, all that. And what effect does that have on the ability to get money to the actual roads, bridges, dams, and infrastructure we need? Of course, we have the high-speed rail. That boondoggle is still ongoing. Jerry Brown's folly is what I call it. Anyway, we will talk about all that and take your calls. 323-746-TALK is our number. We will be right back after these messages. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount.
Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. Relax at the night, man. We are programmed to receive. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
No wonder so many Californians are trying to check out of the state. LA Times article, California's racial profiling law is terrible legislation, according to police officials. California is about to tackle head-on the charged issue of racial bias in law enforcement. And let me just tell you, from having been on the inside, this is exactly how it goes. There's any sort of a story anywhere in the country, and the minute that it hits the airwaves, you've got California legislators who have just figured out what their next bill is going to be. They might even have a bill in process, and they just gut it and amend it. Sounds like they went hunting and they're gutting their kill and dressing it for dinner. But instead, they gut and amend it, which is just a fancy word for taking out all the language and putting in completely different language. So whatever committees it passed through to get to this point are now lies. It's now a lie. It is now a bill that has broken faith with the people in and of itself, because it didn't start in the normal way and go all the way through so that the public would have plenty of time to become aware of it and then come to committee hearings and oppose it or support it. But none of that matters now because Jerry Brown just signed it. And maybe we should call it the Black Lives Matter bill, which, if you've been paying attention to this show and other shows, the Black Lives Matter movement is a fraud. It isn't about black lives. It isn't about anything except pushing a far left socialist agenda. And it is about redistribution of wealth. It is about redistribution of power. It is literally a war on police. And also, if you listen to the show, you know that I have my own issues with everyone should. Anytime there's a bad cop, every one of us should want to get rid of him. Because that is a pox on the rule of law. That is a stain on our republic, and it cannot be tolerated. But that being said, the vast majority of cops are good cops. They have respect for the law. They have respect for the individuals with whom they interact. And this bill is an insult. Because look, if you pull somebody over, what's the first thing you do? You walk up next to him. You ask for the driver's license and registration, right? So you're an officer. You're standing there. Person you pulled over is white. You can clearly see they're white. You don't need to write that down. You take their driver's license. That's going to go through the computer. So now that's already done. But the whole point is, the minute that they pass this law, they're basically condemning cops as if they had somehow committed a crime. And okay, maybe there are some cops who have done terrible, horrible things. Well, we have a system, and we go through that system. And you know what? Almost inevitably results, even without a trial, you have these completely spineless politicians who just hand out money, even if there's been no admission of any guilt, even if there's nothing of any kind. That's the part that throws me off. There hasn't been any adjudication, and yet we're handing out money. which is a tacit admission of guilt. And this law is just going to create a tremendous loophole for more and more and more people to be able to get rich off the government. And, the idea that you can sue a government even when they haven't done anything wrong, even when there's been no admission of guilt, and wind up cashing in is beyond me. But obviously, Jerry Brown's friends with the trial lawyers. Jerry Brown considers himself a civil rights activist and claims that this action was a big step forward toward protecting minorities from racial profiling. And for many in law enforcement, this measure creates a massive new bureaucratic headache that will do very little to illuminate the question of whether police treat minority groups fairly. I don't know. I got a crazy idea. How about cameras? I know we have cameras in the cars, right? Why don't you put a camera on every officer? End of story. They got to be accountable for their actions, just like anybody else. What do you think of that? Seems to me that would protect the civil rights of everyone. It would protect the civil rights of the police officer because it doesn't get into a he said, she said, or he said. It would protect the civil rights of the individual being arrested. You could clearly see and hear how they're being treated. And you could see and hear how they're treating the officer. And then you would have some sort of an objective medium on which to make decisions as to whether or not that officer acted properly and correctly, or that officer was way out of line. And I think that would be so much more valuable than creating essentially what is a stakehold for lawsuits. It's just a placeholder for a lawsuit. That's what this law is. And you're going to have cops in their departments all over the state being sued, and you're going to have money flowing out from our tax coffers that is not going to be used to keep the streets safe. It's not going to be used to protect public safety. It is going to be used to reward people, in many cases, who were not harmed. Look, if somebody was harmed and there's a trial and there's an admission of guilt, hey, go for it. Make them pay, because that's the only way that they're going to change their behavior. I'm in favor of that. Because, you see, when you do that, then the lawsuit becomes part of the free market system in holding our government accountable. And I think it's an important tool. But I don't like this knee-jerk reaction as if we need another law here in California. Going to go to the phones. We got Mike in Wrightwood. Mike, hey, welcome to the show. Mike, you're on air. Okay. We can't hear Mike, but I'm sure that'll get figured out here. But I'm still at a loss to understand why Jerry Brown signed this. I mean, I've heard people say that Jerry Brown is the most conservative Democrat in Sacramento, and that he's our great hope that he will somehow be rational and reasonable. But I guess when it comes to race, there is no rational and reasonable, and there is no limit to what the government must do in order to appease. I don't even want to say certain communities, because I don't think it's the whole community. I think it's just certain activists and activist groups that are feared because they can make a lot of noise. Lieutenant Steve James, who's the president of the Long Beach Police Officers Association, said there is no racial profiling. There just isn't. There is criminal profiling that exists. Now, that position obviously would be a hard sell to the bill's supporters, who cite studies that show unarmed black men are many times more likely to die by police gunfire than unarmed white men. Hey, how about we're against any unarmed individual being killed by cops? And we want to investigate to the full extent of the law, but we also have to respect that process and follow it all the way through. We can't just have chaos. Well, speaking of chaos, we will be right back with your calls. 323-746-TALK. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clay. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344, 626-910-1344.
California, then we fell into the shiny sea. The weight that drags your heart down, well, that's what took me where I need to be, which is here, out on Zuma, watching you cry like the baby.
Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, former California State Assemblyman and Radio Governor of California, Tim Donnelly. And we're talking about the insanity here in California, which continues, and we're going to get into another story here in a second. Here's the thing. You've got, on the one hand, Jerry Brown signing new laws to racially profile people when they get pulled over by a cop. That's going to create a bureaucratic nightmare. It's going to create more paperwork. It's going to create more occasion for the taxpayer to be sued. Let's just put it that way. Jackpot justice. You know, it could all be prevented with cameras. Simple little cameras. At least you've got some hope of capturing what happened, because you have a lot of people who are doing things. They have a tremendous amount of power and force at their behest. And the idea of a camera at least creates a record that could both exonerate the individual being pulled over or exonerate the cop, because it creates a record. That's all. It's independent. It's not something that can be gamed. It's real. And we're going to go to the phones and see what you think. Mike from Wrightwood, welcome to the show. Mike, are you there?
It seems got that I got to beat, but I'm not getting anything. Yeah.
No, I can hear you now. It seems like you're having trouble hearing me, though. Well, we'll have to give that another whirl. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe it's the rain out here. Do you think, Sean?
I don't know. Stranger things have happened.
It rained in Southern California. That's news at 11.
I mean, electronically, it doesn't hold any water, but who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, let me go back to this. What's going on in California? So you've got on the one hand, you've got the Marxist progressives pushing really, really hard to get people's race and demographic information counted. Now, that may sound nice and it may sound innocent, but the bottom line is they do that so that they can then create a record, and then they can use that record to make claims about how individuals of a certain race are racially profiled. And most of the people pushing for this are black activists. We have the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Black lives don't matter when they're taken by other blacks. They don't care about that. Black lives only matter when they're taken by cops and when the individual is unarmed at the moment of his death or her death. And while I empathize, and I think that's tragic, and I think that's in many cases it is let me just say something that could have been prevented, perhaps. I don't know. But in some of these cases, when the facts came out, they bore a huge difference to the original story. The original story was in Ferguson was that Michael Brown was simply a nice young man just minding his own business and got harassed by a cop, and the cop shot him. Truth is that he had just robbed a store. He had just threatened a clerk. He was a violent thug, and he assaulted the officer, and the officer feared for his life. Now, whether or not you agree with him pulling that trigger doesn't really matter, because it's a very, very, very different story than that which the news media pushed out as a narrative. And then the whole thing about hands up, don't shoot, that was a lie. That was basically refuted by the grand jury testimony of a number of individuals who were present as eyewitnesses, and one, I believe, of which who reversed his testimony and said, no, it never happened. So my point is that you have a left that is in power, particularly in California, that is obsessed with making a point about race. I guess unless it happens in San Francisco, where the policies of the left have resulted in blacks actually being left out of the whole economic progress that's taking place. Any recovery of the economy, I guess blacks need not apply, because they saw their incomes, according to an article in the San Francisco Chronicle by data reporter Joaquin Palomino, saw their income fall nearly 5%. And white, Asian, and Latino residents saw their incomes actually go up in 2014. Here's the quote. For every dollar earned by median white household statewide last year, black households made 58 cents, according to Palomino. Contra Costa and Santa Clara counties reported close to the same ratio. In Alameda County, white households earned more than twice as much as black households. The racial pay gap is largest in San Francisco, however. Well, I mean, isn't that where you'd expect it to be smallest? I mean, with all the policies the liberal policies of redistribution of wealth, of constantly claiming they're helping the little guy. I guess the operative term here is claiming, because their policies evidently aren't helping. But we'll get into that in a minute. Only 27% of blacks own homes, compared to 36% of whites, Palomino notes, citing U.S. Census data. 28% of black households are in poverty, and only 8.6% of white households. I mean, that's a huge disparity there. So 28% of black households are in poverty. 28%. That's 4 times the rate of white. Or three. Doing that Common Core math. 3 times the number as many white households are in poverty. This is under a black president. This is under the Marxist progressive absolute Democrat Party rule here in California. How could this be? This is shocking. The data are particularly striking, given that San Francisco is home to the nation's liberal elite. You know, the people like, of course, I include in the Bay Area, the Silicon Valley. So we have the Bill Gates of the world. We have the Mark Zuckerberg, who he doesn't like neighbors, so he's bought all the properties around his house so he can tear them down and have peace and quiet. But he wants to bring in millions upon millions upon millions of illegal aliens into California and into the United States. He's absolutely in favor of a full-blown absolute amnesty, erase the border. And who does that hurt the most? Yeah, you guessed it. Black Americans, especially Black Americans who want to work. Black Americans, young people who are looking for that job to give them that chance and launch their path. And a lot of middle-aged people who were working in hotels and in construction and in manufacturing. Those jobs have now been largely, well, most of the manufacturing has been pushed offshore, but you have young Black Americans who basically can't find a job now because they don't speak Spanish, because we have not only tolerated illegal immigration, we have encouraged it and incentivized it. Places like San Francisco. So surprise, surprise, the sanctuary for illegal aliens is a place where blacks aren't doing as well as other people, as other Americans. I don't know, maybe before they start pushing policies on the rest of the country, because if you've heard of it, remember that affirmative action where they basically want to go into any neighborhood that they consider to be too white, and they want to move in people of color. They want to move in and put Section 8 housing. They want to do all this stuff in the name of creating so-called equality. I don't know, just an idea. Maybe they could start with San Francisco. Maybe they could go to the wealthiest neighborhoods. Maybe they could go to Mark Zuckerberg's house and build a housing project right next door to him. Like literally to where when he's brushing his teeth, people can see him. I mean, that would be poetic justice. There are four lots. Maybe they could build 4 projects to surround his house and let him see the effects of the policies that he believes are important for fairness and equality. Yeah, they're not about fairness and equality. They're about what's good for them. They want you to pay for all of their pet projects, their social experiments, and they don't want it in their backyard. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want it anywhere near him. We'll get into the environmentalist spin on this with an article from Dr. Thomas Sowell, brilliant economist, right after this break. 323-746-TALK if you want to weigh in. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. So in San Francisco, nowhere has there been more hand-wringing over a lack of affordable housing as among politicians and others in the coastal California. Nobody has done more to make housing more unaffordable than those same politicians and their supporters. This is Thomas Sowell at townhall.com. Great column if you haven't read it. A recent survey showed that the average monthly rent for a one-bedroom, this is a one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco, was just over $3,500 a month. Some people are paying $1,800 a month just to rent a bunk bed in a San Francisco apartment. Picture that. That's all the room you get. Is a top or bottom of a bunk bed. Yeah, $1,800 a month. You're splitting an apartment, a one-bedroom apartment. It is not just in San Francisco that putting a roof over your head can take a big chunk out of your paycheck. The whole Bay Area is like that. 30 miles away, Palo Alto, home prices are similarly unbelievable. One house in Palo Alto built more than 70 years ago, this is a 1,000 square foot house. What did it go for? 500,000, 800,000, a million? No. $1.5 million for a 1,000 square foot house. Another city in the Bay Area with astronomical housing prices is San Mateo, which recently held a public meeting and appointed a task force to look into the issue of affordable housing. Public meetings, task forces, political hand-wringing about a need for affordable housing occur up and down the San Francisco Peninsula because this is supposed to be such a complex issue. Someone once told President Ronald Reagan that a solution to some controversial issue was complex. President Reagan fired back and said the issue was in fact simple, but it's not easy. If the solution to affordable housing prices in California, in parts of California, is simple, is it? Yeah. It's as simple as supply and demand. What gets complicated is evading the obvious because it is politically painful. One of the first things taught in an introductory economics course is supply and demand. When a growing population creates a growing demand for housing and the government blocks housing from being built, the price of existing housing goes up. This is not rocket science. This is not a breakthrough on the frontiers of knowledge. Economists have understood supply and demand for centuries, and so have many other people who never studied economics. As a matter of fact, I would posit most people get it. Housing prices in San Francisco and many other communities for miles around were once no higher than the rest of the country. But beginning in the 1970s, housing prices in these communities skyrocketed to 3 to 4 times the national average. Why? Because local government laws, here it comes, the government, once again, rides into the rescue to save us from ourselves, to save the poverty-stricken who can't live in Palo Alto. I can't live in Palo Alto. I get that. I don't need the government to try to help me buy a house or rent a house or anything else. I want to live where I can afford to live. But government laws and policies severely restricted or banned outright the building of anything on huge tracts of land. They called it preserving open space. And open space has become a cult obsession. Self-righteous environmental activists, I call them self-righteous environmental extremists, many of whom are sufficiently affluent, they don't have to worry about housing prices. They just want to keep people out, at the same time pushing policies all over the rest of the state and all over the rest of the country, forcing affordable housing to be built in areas where it is not zoned for. The government wants to come in and basically change the codes, change the regulations, change the agreements that were put in place, the covenants under which individuals bought that property. Why? Because they've run out of things to do. And the only way that they can grow their department, in this case, it's the Housing and Urban Development, HUD, is to go to the final frontier and go infiltrate every single community that they can and justify their existence and continue to grow. Because, look, you either grow or die. It's the same for a government agency as it is for a business. Of course, we've never seen any government agencies actually die. I would posit that an awful lot of you would love to see that. I would. It was the same President Ronald Reagan who said that the closest thing to eternal life on earth is a government bureau. And I'm afraid he's right. And I would venture to say that it's never happened. I can't think of a single government bureaucracy that has disappeared in my lifetime. 323-746-TALK. We'll take your calls when we come back. looking for the Radio Free California Network, you found it. And I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in California. And we've been talking about the hypocrisy of the Bay Area, which it's the locus of power in California for the leftist, Marxist, progressive Democrats who love to tell everybody else how to live, who want to control using the government almost every aspect of your life. But when it comes to the Bay Area, their policies have backfired. And anybody who understands supply and demand could see this would happen. But in the name of the environment, of massive open space requirements that has become sort of a religion, quasi-religion to these environmentalist zealots. But on the flip side, what they discovered was by setting aside land for the environment, it was not available to build needed housing. And because it was not available to build needed housing, the cost of the existing housing stock went up because of government interference. And it went up to 3 to 4 times the national average. And now they're using the government to try to rectify that, which is another disaster, because the minute that you use the government to fix a problem that the government created, you have 2 unintended consequences, which is now you even have the federal government getting in on this. They look around and they say, oh, the projects we built, the Section 8 that we put in place, none of that's really working, but it would work really a lot better. We feel like it would be helpful to individuals who've never had a fair shake in life to be able to live in a neighborhood they can't afford. That's putting it in very simple language. And if we put them in a neighborhood that they can't afford, somehow being in that atmosphere and that ambiance is going to improve their lives. I don't know how, but I'm going to go back to the phones, give it one more try. Mike, let me know if you're there. Mike from Wrightwood. And let me know if you can hear me. Nope. I think we just lost him. But this is a government-created problem, and then a government-mandated solution to a government-created problem leads to more problems, wreaks havoc on the marketplace. And the bottom line is, if we're going to tolerate the Mark Zuckerbergs, and look, I don't really have an issue with Mark Zuckerberg buying up 4 houses around his house and tearing them down. It's his right as an American. It's called private property. He can do whatever he wants with it. Now, he's got to answer to whatever codes there are within his own neighborhood, but I don't know. I don't know that there's a code that requires you to have more houses than you want. I think you could make a case that if he were to buy property and then build multiple houses, they might have an issue with him because there might be existing covenants that forbid that. But and zones and zoning and all that sort of thing. But in terms of tearing down houses and building or building nothing really, just saying, hey, I want to have the open space, I don't have a problem because Mark Zuckerberg bought the houses. Do you see the difference? When the government says we're going to eminent domain mass tracts of land and we're going to preserve those for the environment, and we're going to do this, and we're not going to have any building here, and we're not going to have any building here, we're not going to build any housing here, but the area is growing. So where are people going to live? That becomes an issue. But when the government hampers it to such an extreme that market forces can't intervene, because market forces always intervene. Where there's a need, there's somebody willing to sell you what you need. That's America. And the irony of the whole thing, and what got me off on this topic on our Meanwhile, in California segment, because there's so much California news today, is very simply, finally, some data has come out. It's in the San Francisco Chronicle that 3 times as many black households as white households live in poverty. That particularly in the Bay Area, black households don't even make 60 cents on the dollar, 58 cents. I would love to hear Hillary Clinton's take on this. I'm sure she would say something very shrill and inappropriate, and would promise to take more of your money and redistribute it. Speaking of which, Sean, you told me you had a couple of sound bites on her talking about the Second Amendment, and I hate to shift gears so radically, but it just seems appropriate given that when she was asked about it turns out in her own office when she was in the Senate, she was paying women 72 cents on the dollar or 77 cents. I can't remember which, but it was one of the constant gripes of the feminist left was that women have only been paid 77 cents on the dollar, and she's paying them 72. And, here you have it. Here we are in Nancy Pelosi country, and the liberal leftist Democrat policies are an epic fail if you happen to be black because you've been left behind. And, it's not lost on me that San Francisco, the city where this is happening, is also a sanctuary for illegals. It's a sanctuary for people who've come into the country illegally and committed a crime. But, well, if they're willing to tolerate that, then they're even nicer to the illegals who have come into the country and not committed a crime. And they basically handed over the jobs that many black Americans were doing prior to that because they're willing to do them for less money. So, they undermine the rule of law and say, hey, we don't care that you're here illegally. Doesn't matter to us because we don't really care about Americans. And that is the hypocrisy of San Francisco. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to have some Hillary sound bites for you. 323-746-TALK. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. Hey, welcome back to the Tim Donnelly Show. I'm your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor of California. You can connect with us at timdonnellyshow.com. You can connect on Facebook, Twitter, email, and, of course, the good old-fashioned Alexander Graham Bell device that you are texting on right now as we speak, 323-746-TALK. I'm going to go to the phones. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, how are you?
There?
Yes.
Hi, good. On the gun thing, I found something very interesting, and I have a friend. I'm not real computer savvy or anything like that, but I was watching National Geographic, and it was kind of like one of those Guns or Drugs Inc. programs with like Lisa Ling, where she goes undercover and she follows these, and it was about illegal guns and how they're being made in Philippines and being stamped with, American gun manufacturers labels, Smith & Wesson, Colt, whatever. And then they're being brought in through Mexico, and a large portion of them are being brought in through Oakland, California. You know, the city Jerry ran into the ground before we elected him governor.
Right.
And then from there, they're being distributed by gang members to other cities and stuff like that. Why aren't Governor Brown and the feds concerned about this at all?
Well, that's a great question. Because here's the thing, twofold. Number one, we had a caller last week who lived in a really dangerous neighborhood. His description, not mine.
Uh-huh.
And his neighbor distributed those kind of guns, which were illegal. They were not. They didn't comply with any California laws. They basically were illegal guns that had the serial number scratched off, that were strictly sold to criminals for criminal purposes. And that those kinds of operations, that's where the criminals get their guns. They laugh at these gun control laws. But here's the thing.
And then Governor, yeah.
In Sacramento, we had Leland Yee, who was a state senator, who was basically...
I remember that one.
Remember, he was involved in trafficking guns and even RPGs and other things to terrorists in exchange for campaign contributions. By the way, he's a Democrat. And
and wasn't that being funneled through the Philippines as well?
It was, because it was through some Islamic terrorist groups. So, but here's the thing. Where's the crackdown on that? Why are they cracking down on you and I, who are law-abiding citizens? Why are they preventing people who live in horrible neighborhoods from legally and lawfully and easily obtaining a firearm, as is their right? See, that's the key. And until enough of us make enough noise, and this has to be bipartisan. This can't have anything to do with politics. This is about freedom, and it's about your life.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I know a lot of Democrats that are pro-gun, and they're just brain dead. They don't know what's going on. They don't pay attention, and they've heard how evil Fox News is, and they don't listen to that, and they don't listen to talk radio, and, they say, you tell them what's going on, oh, that can't be true. Oh, they wouldn't do that, and it's like, you better wake up.
You need to convert them to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Sure, I do very much. Thanks, Tim.
Hey, give me your first name and city.
Cindy from Lancaster, California.
Cindy, thank you for calling, and thank you for listening. And hey, this is that's a hugely important issue, because the hypocrisy of not going after the criminal traffickers of guns, who not only are selling guns that are going to be used in crimes, but they're also selling guns that could be very dangerous, because who knows to what standard they were manufactured under. Like it or not, in California, and believe me, you can go down to your friendly Turners and find this out, but they have a list of guns that are not allowed to be sold because they haven't passed a certain number of tests. In California, ratchets it up every time. They're always pushing it higher and higher and higher, and looking to take every gun possible off the street for any excuse imaginable. It has very little to do with safety. But none of these guns will have passed any of those safety tests. Now, they will appear, because they are forgeries, they will appear to have passed those tests, making them twice as dangerous, because the one thing you don't want to have in your hand is a firearm that could explode because of a defect and harm yourself or potentially kill you simply in the commission of using it for whatever purpose, whether you're at the range target shooting or what have you, or God forbid you're trying to defend your life and it blows up and kills you. I mean, so on a whole host of levels, that's a piracy. It is fraudulent what is the right word? When you have copycats. Well, you know what I mean. But if these were DVDs and Hollywood was at stake instead of the gun industry, Jerry Brown would be all over it. Jerry Brown would be, breaking down the containers in the port himself. He'd be riding there with a bulletproof vest on, pretending he's some kind of hero. But when it's gun makers, because gun makers are considered some of the most evil people on earth, even though have you ever been to a gun show? You ever been out to a shooting range? Salt of the earth people. Yeah, gun shows, okay. Let me rephrase it. Sometimes there's some crazy ones, but whatever, But you go to a gun range, usually you run into normal people. They're taking some time off. They're taking their kids out. They're making a family day of it. It's the complete opposite of how Hollywood portrays it. It's the complete opposite of how the newspapers push a narrative about the so-called gun show loophole. I don't even know what the gun show loophole is because I don't believe that it exists. I've never heard anyone prove it. I've been to gun shows. You have to follow all of these same rules that you follow anywhere else. There's you have to trade your gun or sell your gun through an FFL, but see, none of that matters because those are just facts, and facts are not as interesting when what is at stake is the narrative that must be pushed at all costs. And the narrative is that guns are dangerous. The narrative is that you have crazy right-wing, anti-government type people who are looking to stockpile guns and ammunition for nefarious purposes. You know what? If you're stockpiling guns and ammunition, God bless you. Why? Because it's your right. You get to do that. You're an American. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that you shall only have 10,000 rounds of ammunition. As a matter of fact, when people get nervous, they do a couple things. They stock up on guns and ammunition, and they stock up on food, it's particularly stuff that dry goods and things that can be stored over a long period of time. When people are concerned about economic uncertainty, and certainly in this current climate where you have a Marxist progressive as president, you have a legislature controlled by the Marxist progressive left in California. You'd be crazy not to be uncertain, not to feel uncertain, certainly. But the minute you start doing some of those things, you wind up on one of those lists at the DHS. And once you get on a list, it's pretty hard to get off. Mike in Wrightwood, third time. Hopefully this works. And I guarantee you're on some list somewhere.
Well, I've been trying to get to, well, yeah, that's a given. But, I mean, it's been pretty good. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. It's been working. You just have to, you got to have your radio off and listen pretty intently to the phone. But it's been working. So it's good. It's good that you got back through and connected.
Yeah, if I turn the radio on, I can hear you trying to ask me questions, but not on the phone. But anyways, it's, I don't know. I think, a lot of things are going wrong lately. But, I mean, hell, I went into Walmart yesterday and had a guy tell me I was a fake service, never done anything. And, I mean, it got to the point where it almost got into a fist fight because you don't challenge my integrity and my honor. And watch Walmart employees stand there even after I told them, why don't you have the police come over here and let's prove who's who? And it got pretty ugly considering the fact that, Walmart just stood there and allowed it. And, I mean, if it wasn't for the guy's wife finally stepping in, it would have been bad. But I mean, it's the society we have nowadays. I mean, people are just looking for a reason to go after people, try and find something wrong. I mean, anybody who knows me knows I'm bald. I don't have any hair. So when a guy says your hair's not within regulations, it really does show what kind of a moron a person is. But, I mean, that's...
Mike, unfortunately, we're up against it. Let me hold you over the break, okay?
I know.
We'll be right back.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
Now that is some fitting music, given that we are talking to Mike from Wrightwood, who... Mike, tell us again what happened at the Walmart. Mike is a service member. He's a veteran, and evidently there was some kind of an altercation.
That's fucking...
Yeah, I don't think he can hear. He must have some issue with the phone. Anyway, Mike, we lost you. All I can say is, look, no veteran deserves to be treated the way you were, and hopefully the proper authorities, will. Well, I don't know who the proper authorities were, but certainly, there's just no place for that. No place for that. Hey, Sean, do we have any of those Hillary clips?
Yeah.
Let's change course here. And Hillary came out, of course, saying, I basically want to undo the Second Amendment. And Sean, you asked a really good question. Has anyone this shrill ever been elected to anything?
Yeah, I'm wondering that because she comes off very hostile all the time.
Well.
Except when she goes on, Saturday Night Live and then tries to act like, she's just one of the gals.
Yeah, well, can I say Nancy Pelosi? She's pretty shrill. And there's a number of other ones, and they all seem to be on the Democrat side for some reason. But let us treat you to the scintillating sounds of Hillary.
First of all, we have one here where she was asked about the Benghazi and emails and the whole thing, and here was her response to it.
Making hay of this.
Right.
I have to ask you, if the tables were turned and it was Dick Cheney or Karl Rove who had a private email account and a private server on which they conducted all their government business, would you be as understanding?
I would never have done that. Look at the situation they chose to exploit, to go after me for political reasons. The death of 4 Americans in Benghazi. I knew the ambassador. I identified him. I asked him to go there. I asked the president to nominate him. There have been 7 investigations led mostly by Republicans in the Congress, and they were nonpartisan, and they reached conclusions that, first of all, I and nobody did anything wrong, but there were changes we could make. This committee was set up, as they have admitted, for the purpose of making a partisan political issue out of the deaths of 4 Americans. I would have never done that, and if I were president and there were Republicans or Democrats who were thinking about that, I would have done everything to shut it down.
Now, you see, she's seizing on the mistake that California Congressman Kevin McCarthy has already made. Kevin McCarthy came out and made some comment about how, see what we did? We did the Benghazi hearing, and next thing you know, Hillary's dropping in the polls double digits. Now, I don't know if you want to pick a guy like that to be your Speaker of the House, because that was really a boneheaded comment. I don't even know where or how or why anyone would say something like that. But he did. So now Hillary can go out and wear that as a veil, as a mantra, as a sackcloth, and say, oh, woe is me. Look what the Republicans did. It was all politically motivated. You know what? I got to tell you, having met a widow, Dorothy Woods, of one of the incredible, heroic Navy SEALs who was there on scene, I got to tell you, for Hillary to say that is insulting. There needs to be an accounting, and there needs to be an explanation, and the truth needs to come out to the American public on the deaths at Benghazi.
Well, do you not hear a slam in there against Obama, too? She says, if I was the president, I'd shut this down.
Yeah, she's increasingly bringing out the claws toward Obama. It is kind of fun to watch, kind of like a cat fight, except I guess you can't really call Obama a cat. Well, maybe on some level, I don't know. But what else you got there?
Okay, we have this where she was talking to somebody in the press about gun control. This
hold
morning.
on before you.
In order to
before you
make
play.
sense of it,
Okay, what now?
Well, I don't think we should just play these things without warning people. Look, if you have small children in the car, if you have animals that you care about, you might want to mute or change the channel because we are about to play the scintillating, shrill sounds of Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Well, she doesn't get as hostile with this one, and then so this one I'm going to play, and then there's another one after that where she's having a town hall meeting type of thing, talking about gun control, and she gets real sappy with it and brings one of the Sandy Hook moms into it and tries to play that for everything it's worth.
in order to make sense of it, we have to be honest. We have to face hard truths about race, violence, guns, and division.
That was just her when she was laying out her gun control policy. Let's see.
I mean, she's made it clear that she wants to eliminate the Second Amendment. She is much more hostile toward the Second Amendment than any other Democrat I've heard other than Obama.
Okay, and let's see what this
Just
one is.
beyond my comprehension that we are seeing these mass murders happen again and again and again. And as I have said, we have got to get the political will to do everything we can to keep people safe. You know, I know there is a way to have sensible gun control measures that help prevent violence, prevent guns from getting into the wrong hands, and save lives. And I am committed to doing everything I can to achieve that. Thank you.
See, the whole keep people safe, that then brings up the quote by one of our founders who said that it is that if you are willing to sacrifice essential freedoms, essential liberties for safety and security, you deserve neither. I think it was Franklin who said that. And that's really what's at the core of this whole debate. You know, we talked about it extensively last week, but what would you rather be, safe or free? See, I don't trust the government can keep me safe. I don't want to give all my power and my authority and my freedom and my rights to them. I don't want them to subjugate me, period. No matter what they promise. And so far, the gun-free zones have been an epic fail. You create a gun-free zone, you now have a danger zone. Everywhere else in the public where people are able to keep and carry conceal, at least there's some kind of counterbalance. Because you don't know when, where, or why a disturbed, deranged mass murderer may decide to strike. But you do know one thing. If you're a concealed carry permit holder, and, you know, or if you're someone who doesn't have a concealed carry permit, but you have a gun on you, and you choose to take the risk and draw fire onto yourself and fire onto the individual who is killing people indiscriminately, which is usually how these things go. Or, you know, in the case where he's lining them up and asking them if they're Christians. And then those are the ones who get capped in the head. You'd be able to slow it down or maybe stop it. That's the whole point. That is a certainty. When you introduce that second gun at the scene, whether it is from an individual who just happens to be randomly there, or whether it's a cop. But we know on average that it takes the police about 4 minutes to get there. That means in some areas it's 8. And in a gunfight, that's an eternity. Especially when everyone else is unarmed except the one hell-bent on mass murder. So when Hillary talks about this, I think she's going to, I think the next poll that comes out, she's going to fall even further. Because I think there's a lot of Democrats. And by the way, if you're a Democrat out there and you think that Hillary Clinton's ideas on gun control are stupid, I'd love to hear from you. If you're a Democrat out there who is tired of the Democrat Party having gone so far off track from its original foundation and principles, give us a call, 323-746-TALK. And we will be talking about that and a whole lot more when we get back from this break. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. It is happening here in California. It should be called the land of the setting sun, not just because we're on the West Coast, but so many people want to check out of Hotel California and never come back. And you can't really blame them. I mean, every time you turn around, there's another stupid law. You know, why is it that the people in Sacramento can't figure out a way to shrink government, make it work better, fix the roads, spend the money on the stuff they're supposed to do, like taking care and maintaining the infrastructure. That's the highways, the bridges, finish the dam project. You know, look, we are actually having, don't look now, but news at 11. Storm track. Breaking news. It's raining in Southern California. Well, it's raining up and down California today. That's a good thing. It would be a great thing if we had all the dams in place and also had the political will in place to not let the rivers flow out to the ocean at full flow. Doesn't make any sense for us to do that, because then what happens is you've got absolutely no control. You're not maintaining water that should be maintained for human beings, for farmers, for other types of industry. Instead, you let it flow out to the ocean, and Nobody benefits. I mean, the fish don't care. The fish will come back. We've been through times of drought. And when we have times of drought, it's sometimes you have the environment suffers. That's just part of life. But we've got a governor who's signing laws to put more burdens on police officers. We've got a governor who lives in an area where Black Americans are worse off than almost anywhere else, in spite of, or maybe I should just tell the truth and say because of, the leftist policies of the past 30 years, 40 years here in California, the legacy of Jerry Brown's first term, when he didn't want to build the infrastructure we needed. But they're happy to raise taxes. And Dan Walters wrote a column today in the Sacramento Bee, and Dan Walters is actually a pretty decent columnist. And in that, he stated the Californians are paying we are paying $250 billion. Let me say that again. 250 billion with a B in taxes. Did you hear that, Sean?
I heard it, the big B.
So you're lucky you live in Nevada, because here that's $6,400 a year for each of the state's 39 million residents. Well, slow down, Skippy, because most Californians, I'd say more than half, well over half, aren't paying that. It's the 49% or the 48%, or as Mitt Romney made famous, the 47% who work for a living who are paying those taxes. So when you do that, if you're going to take these numbers and spread them out over the whole population, which is, first of all, hugely incorrect, because you also have a large number of those people who are too young to work. They're in family units, maybe only one or two people in the family work, not 8. So you automatically double that number by cutting the population that actually works out, or I'm sorry, cut the population that doesn't work out and leave in the part that does. So now you're at 12,800 per Californian. Of course, some people don't pay that much, and some people pay a heck of a lot more. We have a progressive tax scheme here that penalizes those who are the most successful in an attempt to part you from as much of your money as possible so that you never do that again. And a lot of people who are very wealthy, they learn their lesson, especially after Prop 30 was implemented and it was retroactive. So you'd think, given how much of a tax bite the California government takes, you would think that they would say, hey, gosh, we've soaked you guys enough. It's high time that we look at cutting our expenses and operating more efficiently and helping people get off dependency on government. But see, that's not how you build a Marxist progressive kingdom. Because in the Marxist progressive world, the socialist world, the communist world, you need as many victims as possible. You need people dependent on government. You need people with a gripe against the man. That's why you have the Black Lives Movement out there. That's why you have the Occupy movement out there. That's why you have all these different activist groups that spring out of places like Berkeley that are funded by all kinds of leftist money. There's all kinds of leftist billionaires, by the way. They just don't want anybody else to get rich. They want to build a moat around the world so that they're the only billionaires and they can feel good about handing out little stipends of your money, not their money, but your money. They give their money to fight you, to deprive you of your hard-earned cash in your check. That's how it works. That's what George Soros does. That's what Mark Zuckerberg does. That's what Bill Gates does. That's what all these guys do. They're not out there giving just their own money. I mean, Bill Gates does have a foundation to push for the stuff he believes in. But it may not be the same thing you believe in. Hey, 323-746-TALK. We will be right back with your...
Get your motor running. Head out on the highway, looking for adventure, and whatever comes our way.
Hey, if you are just tuning in to the Radio Free California Network, where have you been? We are 2/3 of the way through, but you are here just in time, and we are going to open the phone lines on a number of topics. 323-746-TALK. One, of course, is gun control, which is always on my mind because guns are equivalent to freedom. It's that simple for me. Yes, I agree with President Ronald Reagan. Most things in life are simple. They might be hard, but they're simple. And I'm not willing to give up my guns. I'm not willing to give up my freedom. I don't care what emotional arguments Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or the media make on behalf of further and further and further encroachments. I don't know where they plan to go next. We're going to keep an eye on Obama with his executive orders. I mean, my God, he's using that thing like an assault weapon on America's liberties. And every time you turn around, our civil liberties are under assault by a guy who claims he's protecting them. I'm not sure which brand of tyranny is coming next out of the White House, but mark my words, all you need to do is tune in every day here, 3 to 6 p.m. We will keep you abreast of the situation and alert you to what you can do about it. With Hillary, hey, look, I think our best strategy with Hillary is just shut up and get out of her way. That the more she talks, the more people hate her. We played some clips earlier. You have never heard a more shrill human being who rants and raves in a tone of voice that is really hard to hear. We've also been talking about taxes, sort of the flip side of the government got a gun to your head and then they're picking your pocket. And we talked about how California pays more taxes than almost any other state. We transfer something close to $13,000 from everyone who works in California. But I guess it's a little worse in Chicago. Chicago, Carl Sundberg's City of the Big Shoulders, is about to find out just how heavy a tax burden homeowners are able to bear. Because Mayor Rahm Emanuel, good buddy of Barack Obama, has revealed his plan for a massive property tax to pay for unfunded pension liabilities. Now, let me say that again. He's going to levy a massive property tax on homeowners in order to pay for unfunded pension obligations. And for taxpayers, it ain't pretty. The mayor wants a $543 million increase in property taxes. That's $500 million to cover police and fire pensions, as well as additional taxes and fees to close a projected $745 million budget shortfall. I don't know. Maybe cut spending? Maybe go to the police and firefighters and say, look, you guys have had a good deal for a long, long time, and we can't afford it. Somebody made a bad deal. It's my job here as the person in charge to protect the taxpayers' coffers, and we can't do this anymore. You're going to have to shoulder some of the burden. Not a lot, but you're going to have to agree to a contract that makes you part of the solution. You know, when you say that to a public sector union member, oh my gosh, you better be prepared for a war. You better be prepared. You better duck instinctively, because they will come after you, and they will bully you, and they will intimidate you, and they will do whatever they can to brutalize you. This is what union thugs and union bullies do. Believe me, I've been on the receiving end of it long before I was ever even in politics, simply for asking a question on a soccer field one day about why we had to have so many fire stations when we could get by with less. And then maybe we'd have a lower tax burden. And you're not allowed to think that, by the way. But, of course, what they're doing in Chicago, I'm sure will not be lost on those politicians here in California who will never let any opportunity, never let any potential manufactured crisis go to waste. So you can expect your taxes to go up here. My question is, look, do you think that you don't pay enough? I'm just curious. Are you one of those people who's driving around, you work hard, you pay your bills, you are on your way home right now. You're sitting in traffic on a freeway project that should have been done a long, long time ago, but you are sitting in it. And you are stewing. And you are saying to yourself, I just want to know, are you sitting there as you hear the news that I've broken for you on how much you pay in taxes in California? Are you sitting there saying to yourself, I don't pay enough. I need to do more. I need to give Jerry Brown more money because Jerry Brown is such a great steward of my tax dollar that, you know what, high-speed rail, bring it on. Let's steal more money from business owners and fund the high-speed rail and call it greenhouse gas reduction. What else you got, Jerry? You want more lawsuits against the cops? You want to create a whole new classification to sue the cops based on racial profiling, which is already built right into the system. You can tell everybody's race. It's on their driver's license. And or you can look at their picture. Last time I checked. But no, we're going to create a new category there. Just wait until we need to shore up the pensions again. Because, see, in California, a dirty little secret, just like what they're talking about in Chicago. But and by the way, this is going on in California. They're trying. They're working on it. The unions are pushing and pushing and pushing for the elimination of Prop 13. They want to get rid of Prop 13. They want to weaken it. They've got about 4 or 5 different angles they're approaching it on. We've talked about it extensively on this show, and so you're aware of it. But Prop 13, passed back in 1978, basically limits how fast your property taxes can go up. And that's a good thing, because if we didn't have that limit in place, the government would continue to outstrip the increase in property values in spending and obligate you by raising your property taxes and basically make home ownership a nightmare, make it unaffordable. I mean, talk about unaffordable housing. And the big push for this was largely centered around elderly people, senior citizens who were living on fixed incomes. And pretty soon their property tax was higher than their mortgage payment. And you had people losing their houses all over California, that's out of control when they can just write a blank check. So Prop 13 put the brakes on. And ever since, every liberal, every leftist, every Marxist progressive, every union leader, union thug leader, because that's what they are, every single one of them has been pushing to completely eliminate or weaken the 2/3 protection and make it a simple majority so they can continue to pass tax increases and constantly, at every turn, raise the cost of living, raise fees, raise taxes that are called fees until, and we got a perfect example. We've got here in this region, the state responsibility areas, anywhere in the state responsibility areas, and you know where you are, up in the mountains, up on the wooded woodland areas, wild areas. They passed a tax that is absolutely unconstitutional. Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association has been battling it in court. Many of you have filed protests, and of course they send you back a note, hey, you got to pay it anyway, or you pay it with your protest, and then you hope to God to get something back someday. But here's the sad thing. They aren't even using the funds that they're stealing from you. So they never needed them in the first place. It was all a ploy. We had a bad fire year, and Jerry Brown was pissed off that Republicans held the line back in 2011. And on July 1st of 2011, we flipped him the bird and told him, you can take your 1% sales tax increase and shove it, because we're going to force it to retire, for it to end, for it to sunset, for it to disappear out of existence. And we did that. And he hated us for it. And he sought revenge. And in a lot of the Republican areas are rural. A lot of the red zones, the state responsibility areas, happen to fall in Republican territory. And so he levied a tax. It had nothing to do with, it never added a single firefighter to the streets, never added any fire engines, never added any resources, never did anything to help protect you or your home from fire. All it did is gave you an opportunity to give the government more money for nothing. We should play that song, Money for Nothing, Chicks for Free by Dire Straits. Anyway, 323-746-TALK. We'll be back right after these messages. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turner's is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount.
You do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it.
Hey, another reason. Thanks for the bumper coming back in. Money for Nothing, Chicks for Free. That's Dire Straits, and that kind of sums up the entire tax policy and everything else that's going on in California. But hey, switching gears here yet again, the another reason to love Donald Trump, he's probably one of the only ones that I would trust running trade policy that's running for office. Let me make one qualification and say I would also feel confident with Carly Fiorina being in there. I like guys like Ted Cruz and a few others, but in terms of having absolute confidence that they would go in there, ferret out the issues, and strike the right deal, trumps everyone. Simple as that. Here you have, remember we talked about the toilet paper trade deal. Well, those negotiations, after nearly 6 years of secretive talks, were finalized this weekend in Atlanta. And the announcement of the deal came in on Monday morning. TPP, the toilet paper trade deal, is a massive deal encompassing 12 nations, the U.S., Australia, Brunei, Darussalam, I've never even heard of that, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, and Vietnam. has come under serious fire from both populist and conservative Republicans and from a lot of Democrats. Now, let me restate that. You've got conservative Republicans and you've got most Democrats are upset with this deal, and yet it goes through. What does that tell you? It's a pretty simple message. It tells you that your Congress has been bought off. Now, maybe some of them don't understand that they have been bought off. Maybe some of them do. I'm sure a lot of them do. But to strike a deal, and from what I've read of that deal, and we brought you the details months ago, but a lot of what is happening with this deal puts the U.S. at a disadvantage, puts us under the auspices and the umbrella of horrific provisions within deals. And by the way, we can't fight them because the negotiation is that these will all be fast-tracked and whatever terms and conditions go in there, you're not going to have this go through in normal, regular order through the Congress. This is going to go through on a fast-track basis where you either take out the whole deal or you back off and let it go through. You don't get to pick and choose and say, hey, I've got an issue with this provision. We want to see this removed, because you can create pressure to have that removed. And then, of course, you're fighting for the people that you represent. That's the whole point. That's how our system is designed. As if it weren't bad enough for individuals who work for a living in the United States. But now, through the TPA, which is the Trade Promotion Authority, which I just described to you, this TPP deal got through. And I have talked to manufacturers. I have talked to people who are in agriculture and a number of other industries who are deeply, deeply concerned about the impact of this deal. And thank God for Donald Trump. He's one of the only ones who I heard speak out on it. He's been hammering and hammering and hammering away. This is what Trump told Breitbart News in an exclusive statement. The incompetence and dishonesty of this president, his administration, and perhaps most disturbing, the Congress of the United States have placed American jobs and the very livelihood of Americans at risk. The only entities to benefit from this trade deal will be other countries, particularly China and Japan, and the biggest corporations in America. And the biggest corporations in America really aren't American anymore. They're globalist. They're massive, monolithic global entities. They don't know any citizenship. They're not patriotic companies anymore. I'm sorry to break that to you, but I've been there. I've been on the inside. I've seen it, and I've seen the way they work. And I'm staunchly, I won't say I'm pro-business because that's not accurate. I am staunchly pro-free market. Absolutely pro-free market. I would never support anything that would tie the hands of business by the government unless it was absolutely, positively, 100% essential, and I don't believe much of it is. But here you have it. The small business operators, farmers, manufacturers, and others are going to again be burdened with unfair trade practices, currency manipulation. If you're a small business owner, you don't have time to fight currency manipulation. You can't deal with unfair trade practices. It's way beyond your pay grade. You're out there in the field trying to get a crop in, trying to get enough water to get your crop in. The exploitation of cheap labor. See, there it is. It's the illegal alien invasion. They want to keep it coming. They want that ready, massive oversupply of cheap, exploitable labor. And that's both Republicans and Democrats. The Democrats want the cheap votes, and the Republicans want the cheap labor. And I agree with Donald Trump. He said the lack of transparency through the secret negotiations should prove that this deal is horrendous. If this was such a great deal, why are they hiding it? Seriously. Why not lay it out on the front pages of the paper so that everybody knows what it is you're agreeing to? Why are we striking trade agreements with countries we already have agreements with? Why isn't there any effort to make sure we have fair trade instead of free trade? that isn't free to Americans. I mean, every time you turn around, Washington, D.C., Sacramento, they're trying to screw us. And they have willing accomplices in the media who, they never do their job anymore. They don't expose this stuff. Thank God for Donald Trump. You know, there's a reason the guy is surging ahead in the polls and staying ahead in the polls week in and week out. Kudos, Donald Trump. Trump trumps. 323-746-TALK. We will be right back with your calls after this. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clays. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344, 626-910-1344. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor of California. And I don't want to say I'm sorry, because then I know that John from North Carolina will call me and correct me. But I feel responsible, having not made it to actually being elected governor, because you are left in the hands of a Marxist progressive that puts Obama to shame. I mean, Jerry Brown, the stuff he gets away with, the stuff he does, people just roll their eyes and say it's California, but you're being robbed blind when it comes to taxes. They want to raise your taxes again. They're looking at all kinds of new ways. They're continually raising the fuel tax, but they've also done it with a hidden fuel tax that never appears on your bill because it's captured at the refinery level. It is a confiscation of capital that then they have to increase the price of gas, which is why whenever you leave the state of California, it doesn't matter what state you go to, gas is way cheaper. And so my question to you is very simple. Do you think you're paying too much in taxes? 323-746-TALK. Or are you one of those people who you just feel like you're not paying enough? $13,000 a year on average, which means some people are paying a lot more and some are paying less, but if you work for a living. And that doesn't even include all the other myriad of taxes, including property tax and your fuel tax, and this tax and that tax. Every time you turn around, there's a new tax or a new fee affecting your life that it does not get calculated into the income tax part of it. But Sacramento has programs to spend every penny of that money on if they can just get it out of your pocket. And so I'm wondering if there's anybody out there Is there anybody out there who agrees with Jerry Brown's supposition, who agrees with the supposition of most leftists in California, including the vast majority who are in the Assembly and the state Senate? Is there anyone out there who agrees with it? That you're not paying enough? You are not paying enough. I'm just wondering. Because they're your government, they're supposed to represent you, and that's their position. And of course, I would assume there's a lot of you out there who are driving home right now in the rain, and I just walked outside the Radio Free California Network studios, and there are black clouds everywhere, particularly up toward the pass, and I got to tell you, it is looking ugly out there. I would not want to be driving home right now. And hey, if you're driving and that stuff, you probably shouldn't call the show. But if you are a passenger, maybe you can. 323-746-8255. But I just want your take. What do you think about the tax burden in California? Do you think it's too much, not enough, or just right? And, you know, what is it that you don't like paying for? Is it the illegals and all the free stuff that we are giving them as an incentive to come here? Is it the public sector union largesse where we wind up making contracts that we can't afford, that are, in many cases, bankrupting cities and municipalities and counties across California? Or is it the high-speed rail? There's got to be something that you don't want to pay for, especially given the immense waste. I mean, when I look at the California budget, and I was in the Assembly for 4 years, so constitutionally, Jerry Brown has to, or whoever the governor is, has to produce a budget. There's a deadline. He has to present it. And then that budget has to be passed. It can be amended, it can be negotiated, but ultimately there is a constitutional deadline for it to be passed in California, pursuant to, I believe it was Prop 25, that if it's not passed, then the legislators don't get paid. And believe me, when they don't get paid, they get pretty pissy. And the first time that was actually law was in the 2011 cycle. I was in the Assembly, and it was kind of funny because I got a phone call boarding an airplane, and the reporter wanted to know what I thought of it. And I said, hey, I fully support it. I said, I haven't talked to my wife yet, but I absolutely support the fact we're not going to get a paycheck because this was a sham budget. And that only happened the first year. After that, oh boy, they just passed sham budget after sham budget. Nobody said anything. And, I guess that's the rub. Anyway, we're going to go to the phones, find out what you think. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Who am I talking to?
My name's Ted. I live in the Inland Empire. I'll give you an example of how our property taxes are out of control. My city lot property taxes are almost $4,000 a year. My father lives on 10 acres in Missouri, and his property taxes are $400 a year.
Wow.
And in comparison, their roads are beautiful, and ours are pieces of you-know-what.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't say that. I'd have to bleep you. I met a motorcyclist who was touring the Southwest. He was from Texas. And it was when I was running for governor. And, I was trying to get everybody's vote. And I went out and asked him for his vote, not knowing he was from Texas. And he was sitting in front of the hotel I was staying at. And he said, well, one thing I know for sure, you need a new governor. And I said, well,
yeah.
How do you know? And he said, oh, easy. He said, I've been driving your roads. He said, I have been all over the Southwest. California has the worst roads I've seen anywhere. And then he said, and I judge a state's fiscal condition by the condition of its roads. And I thought, wow, that's a very astute observation. And I agree with you, Ted. It's disastrous. So what do you not like paying for? Because they're stealing your money to pay for a whole lot of stuff that really has nothing to do with good government or anything to do with what government is supposed to be doing.
Well, the fact of the matter, I don't think we're paying for anything. I think we're just lining the politicians' pocket.
Well, it's hard to argue with that. And
because they all ride around in bulletproof limousines and stuff that we pay for, and we pay for the gas, and we pay for their bodyguard. Honestly, don't think the money's going anywhere where it's supposed to.
Well, I do know, having been in the assembly, that we approved a number of budgets that included an awful lot of free stuff for people in the country illegally. It approved a lot of largesse in contracts for public sector union members who were getting pay increases. We approved a 15% pay increase for the prison guard union when we had a $30 billion budget deficit. And the reason that is because they bribe almost every politician in the state. They invited us to a dinner, and I was going to go to the dinner because you go to a lot of dinners. You meet a lot of people. That's part of what you do. But then they called my chief of staff, and they said, oh, by the way, if your boss comes to the dinner, we're going to write him a max out check, which at the time was $3,900 to his reelection campaign. They called him on the state phone and told him that in our office.
Wow.
And as soon as I heard that, I said, screw that. I ain't going. And then I was one of only 2 votes, not only to vote against the what was called a memorandum of understanding or whatever for the contract, but I stood up and spoke against it. And the Republican leader was sent over to shut me up by the Democrat speaker. And that is the way you're exactly right. They're bought off. They're paid for, which is why the only solution every time you turn around is to raise your taxes. Anyway, thanks for the call, Ted.
Thank you.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break, and we will come back with more of your calls. 323-746-TALK is the number. Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. Hey, this is the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor of California. And I'm going to go straight back to the phones because we are short on time. Welcome to the program.
Tim. Yeah,
how are you?
Tim?
Who is this?
Good, thank you. I want to tell you how schools have changed since my son was in 2nd grade. He was so proud of his mother that he ends up, the teacher invited me to talk about guns. I took my shotguns, laid them on the table among the students, showed them how it worked, told them about trap shooting and skeet shooting. Now, could I do that today? Probably not. Could my son be proud of me today? Probably not. But I just wanted to tell you that because it was a wonderful experience for me. And
I think that's fantastic. Fun. I think that's fantastic.
I know, that's how life has changed.
It has changed, and it's changed. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. if you, I was watching an older movie and watching all these people in this. It was sort of based in World War II, and it was based in Greece. And in the evening, all the adults were in the village were dancing. It was like just an evening thing. They were just having some festival and they were all dancing. And I was thinking, now we don't commune together like that. We isolate ourselves and we cut ourselves off. And I think that's a much bigger part of this problem, is that isolation and the lack of any purpose in life and lack of any filling of that void that I believe only God can fill in your heart, much more so than this fixation on taking away guns, because guns are just tools. Just like when you laid that shotgun on the table, what was the reaction?
Oh, nothing. The kids were excited, and everybody was excited. The teacher just introduced me. This is my son's blah, blah, blah. He's talking about his mother, and everything was just normal. Just normal. And the kids, they were so intense, and they just loved it. My son did a little critiquing of me, however. He said,
really?
Mom, you did this. Mom, you did that. Like, he's second grade. Well, that was the first time that I had actually talked before an audience. So even though it was second graders, still it was quite a thing. And my son's always been proud of me, and I've done great things with shotguns and represented the United States many times, and have done extremely well worldwide and United States-wide. So it's just very interesting. And yeah, and I laid 2 or 3 of them on the table. I mean, it was so cute and so fun. Yeah.
And how many years ago was that you went to his second grade class?
That was probably about 39 years ago. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And that's wow, an awful lot has changed in that short period of time. The in terms of shooting, did you compete in trap and skeet and all that?
Yes, trap. I hold the world's bronze medal, and I hold a U.S. bronze medal. Yes.
Wow. Now, do you mind giving us your name?
Yeah, my name is Barbara, and I'm from Apple Valley.
Well, congratulations on that. I am friends with Kim Rohde, who has also been involved in that. And as a matter of fact, when you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, that's right. Kim is supposed to come on the show, so I will make sure and give a shout out to you. And but I think that's fantastic that you modeled.
Kim, I think I know her. Yes.
Oh, I'm sure you would. Yes, she holds, I believe, more gold records in the Olympics. She's achieved than any living or that anyone had ever done in one sport or something. I got to get all the details on it, but
I'll tell you a little about Kim, if I'm correct. A little about Kim, and that is, I held the Junior Olympics program. They have to qualify for that in order to go to the NRA, to the Olympic. Well, actually, it was the World Champions over in Colorado Springs, and they decided, even though she won that competition, she was too young in trap shooting, and they wouldn't let her go that year. So she may know me. Yes, she probably does know me because she did compete for that, and they wouldn't let her go. I just couldn't believe it because they didn't put an age on that. I mean, my son beat 1,500 guys, men, women, and children, and he won $8,000 that day. So it was a big thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, it's I when I have her on, I'll have to ask her about that and make sure that you make sure you're listening, because you never know who could come on the show. We had a stunt man on Friday.
Yeah. Well, my name's Barbara Yockham, and so yes, I do know Kim, and she probably would remember that her first year. that she competed with that.
I'm sure she would. Well, Barbara, thank you for calling, and thank you for modeling Americanism to your son. We're out of time here, but thanks for listening as well. Hey, this show is not something that I do alone, and I want to make sure and thank everyone who is a part of making it possible. We've got Sean McNeil, the acting producer and engineer, as well as Cassie Cassidy, intrepid guest booker, all of our sponsors, and you, because without you, we don't have a show. And this is the Radio Free California Network, 3 to 6 p.m. every weekday. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show, out.